Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Voices of the West with Dusty Saddle. Today, we have the extreme honor of being able to interview Jeffery Mariotte. He is a very renowned author, over 70 different novels and novelizations, licensed products, all kinds, just almost unlimited amounts of different type of things you've worked on. So, an honor to speak with you today.
I'm busy. Yeah. Thank you, Kevin. It's good to be with you. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, we all kind of aspire to be busy in the level of being able to write and continue writing, and you've done an excellent job of all of that. Tell us a little bit about how you would describe yourself.
I'm a working writer. I'm not a New York Times bestseller. I'm not a literary wunderkind. Um, I'm a I'm a guy who writes books and hopes people will pay me for them. Um, but sometimes I write them even when I'm not getting paid for them, and hope that it balances out in the end.
Sounds about right on things. Looking at your westerns, of all your westerns, which would you suggest to a first-time reader to start with?
For a traditional Western reader, along the Louis L'Amour, Luke Short, um, Johnny D. Boggs kind of range. Probably O'Mara's Gold, which is the first book in my Cody Kavanaugh trilogy. Um, the books in that trilogy follow pretty closely after one another, and it's kind of one big arc. So I would do that one first. But I also write weird westerns, and have a big epic historical western called Blood and Gold: The Legend of Joaquin Mariotte.
Ah,
So for someone who likes historical epics, 600-page um, biographical novel written with a fifth generation descendant of Joaquin Mariotte.
wow, that's impressive. Yes.
So if you're that kind of reader, start there. If you're into weird westerns, I have done a bunch of comics, most notably a series called Desperados,
Mm-hmm.
and one novel set in the world of the Deadlands role-playing game, um, and a bunch of short stories in various anthologies.
Very good. What do you feel makes a great western? Labeled up a whole bunch of different ones from the classics to to graphic novels, that type of thing. What's the common thread that makes those exciting to write and read and partake in?
To me, it's obviously the geography,
Mm-hmm.
um, and to a lesser extent, the era. I love modern westerns, contemporary westerns, as much as historical westerns. Um, but speaking in the realm of the traditional western, you know, pre 1900, post, uh, you can go pretty far back if you're going to include like the Mountain Men and stuff.
You kick
Which,
into the 1850s, that kind of a thing, late 1840s. Yeah.
um, and then it's the kind of the adventure of discovery, of settling a new land, um, being able to pit people against one another and against the environment in a way that can't happen in, or is very hard to happen in today's society, because we have largely tamed our surroundings. Um, but in those days, the surroundings were working hard on taming us, and we kind of had to adapt and learn and um, make our way. And so it was a different set of challenges than we face today, and that took a different type of person to persevere and accomplish that. And I tend to like writing about those kind of people. my motto often is, my heroes have always been cowboys. Um, whether or not I'm writing a contemporary novel or a mystery or a thriller or a western, my heroes tend to be men of the West and men who could have faced those circumstances, even if in the present their circumstances are different.
Determine their own destiny, that whole type of thing where they're self-reliant and the overall Western experience. Yes.
Yeah.
Um, how do you feel that Westerns are best promoted for today's audiences? You've worked everything from comic books up to classic novelization, so you've had a whole bunch of different people you're writing for.
Yeah. It's hard. I have my between my wife and I, blending our families, we have 5 kids.
Me too.
Ranging in age from 36 to 14, and none of them read Westerns. Not for lack of my trying. Actually, some of them have read the comics, but they haven't read the novels that I'm aware of. So it is harder to reach today's kids um, with traditional Westerns or pure Westerns, because they're so far removed from that in entertainment and their daily lives. And you know, the Western hero doesn't usually scroll through social media on his phone while he's sitting on the horse. Although I have seen cowboys doing that when I lived out in the country. So promoting to them, I'm not sure how we do that. In my Coda Kavanaugh series, I tried to be more inclusive, have a more diverse cast. I took some liberties with history. For instance, I had a ranch called the Empress Ranch that was owned by a wealthy widow and populated and worked solely by women who were in need of a safe place to get away from whatever was causing them trouble. So I thought it was an interesting fictional idea, and it presented story possibilities. I don't know of any ranches like that in the actual Old West, but I kind of pitched those books as not your grandfather's Westerns. So they're traditional Westerns in spirit and in feeling, but there are some changes that I made to what we might have seen in the 40s and 50s. I think we have since, particularly going through the revisionist Western of the late 60s and early 70s, we have balanced that out some, but I wanted to keep balancing it in hopes of reaching that younger audience. Whether I have or not, I don't know, but I'm trying.
Always happy to pull more of them in wherever we can find them. Yes, definitely there. What brought you to writing your first Western? What got you actually interested in the entire Western market?
That goes way back. I was a kid in the mid 50s, born in the mid 50s, growing up in the 50s and 60s. My TV heroes were Roy Rogers and Hopalong Cassidy, Gene Autry reruns. Then when I was 6, my dad, who worked for the army, was transferred to France, and there were no Westerns on TV there, but the perception of America in France at that time was that if you came from Chicago, you were a gangster, and if you came from anywhere else, you were probably a cowboy.
I
And
don't think that's changed a whole lot.
probably not. I did in fact come from the Chicago area, and so people would assume that I was a gangster, but I said no, I'm more of a cowboy. And then in the building that my father worked in downtown Paris, building leased and occupied by the US Department of Defense. But there was a Russian barber in there who cut the hair of all the officers and the civilians and so on. And this was in the mid 60s, so I'm sure he wasn't a Russian spy, but he probably was a Russian spy. But he was a good barber, and in his waiting room, I encountered a Roy Rogers comic, and I was going through Roy Rogers withdrawals from being in France. So I glommed onto the comic, and then I was always excited to go back to the barber because there might be more Roy Rogers comics. And I think that experience kind of set a course for my life. I had never lived in the West before I came to California for college, and I haven't left the West since. I'm in Arizona now. So writing Westerns was always something that I was going to work around too. And when I was working for Wildstorm Productions, which was a part of Image Comics in the 90s, we had a line of non-superhero comics, and my boss said, "Hey, you like Westerns, right?" I said, "Yeah, I love them." He said, "Why don't you write a Western comic?" So I came up with Desperados, and it was a hit, and it's still the comic that I'm most identified with all these years later. And then from Desperados, I got the opportunity to write write some Western short stories, and I've just dabbled off and on since, and become more active recently.
Excellent. And certainly being in the West and Arizona particularly, you're surrounded by it all the time, and what better
Yeah.
place to be able to write it in than there.
Yeah. For 10 years, I lived down near the Mexican border and near the New Mexican border out in Cochise County.
Ah,
So
very nice.
I was about midway between Tombstone and Skeleton Canyon, where Geronimo finally surrendered. So history was everywhere, all around me.
Know that area well. Yes, that's beautiful country too.
That is.
Um, what do you think is the most underexposed and underdeveloped part of the Old West? What would you want to explore more in writing about it? Or should we make everybody else be able to look at it a little more closely?
Boy, that's interesting. Probably the impact of women. You had to be tough to be a man in the Old West, trying to make your way there in the early days. But you had to be really tough to be a woman trying to make your way there in the early days. And the women who were going out there were middle class because, for the most part, the poor couldn't afford the wagons and the supplies and the trip out. So largely middle class women from the East, whose lives would have been all lace and proper and protected, sheltered, had that urge to find freedom and find out who they were. And they went west and they found out, and it was not easy, and they had to put up with a lot. But without them, you know, the West would not have become what it became. I suspect that is a story that we need to have told more often.
That would be a good one to read. I would actually read. I'd put it into a movie. I'd do a whole bunch of things with that type of a story. That'd be great.
Mm-hmm.
Which then brings up, with the overall breadth of the West and that kind of thing, what kind of Western have you longed to dream about? Have you long dreamed about writing?
There are a few of those. There is one that I'm kind of in the process of thinking about now, and have not actually put any words down on paper, that involves a couple of the women who came west, and the unexpected confluence, a couple of real women, and the unexpected confluence of their lives. I have another one in the Cody Kavanaugh books, and even in a couple of the thrillers I've written, I have kind of planted seeds of a character named Royal Blue, who had dime novels written about him. So there's just references to this is the new dime novel about Royal Blue, name of the novel and stuff. Well, I actually want to write the story of Royal Blue,
Nice.
um, to pay back all those little seeds that I've planted. So that's coming, and that's going to be kind of I suspect, a large semi-epic. I don't know about 600 pages, but it's going to be more than 60 or 70,000 words, I would say.
Excellent. And so
More
you're
than
bringing to
100,000.
life the dime store hero of the West in the West and reflecting on the West.
Yeah.
That's that'd be fun. I like that. Yes, definitely. Um, how do you feel that the whole Western market has changed or is in the process of changing? I know you're working quite a bit with Wolfpack. You've worked with a variety of different publishers out there. Where do you see the demand for the Western?
Boy, the market is shrinking. Dusty Saddle is putting out books and doing a great job. I know several people who write for Dusty Saddle and love it. I did those books for Wolfpack. I'm not anticipating doing any more for them, but that could change at any point, I guess. And then there's Kensington, but the editor there resigned and then unresigned, and but only for a year, he says. So no one is sure what's going to happen at Kensington. So the markets for novel length Western fiction are getting smaller. To address that to some extent, and I may be getting out over my skis a little bit here. A friend and I are creating a new imprint of our own within a cooperative, kind of a authors cooperative that's run by friends of ours, and we have talked to them and agreed with them to create this new Western imprint, and the first book of which should be out in May from me, and will be a short fiction collection with some new stories and some reprints. And the second book will be a novel by my other friend, who is the second book in a series, the first of which was published by Five Star, but Five Star isn't publishing Westerns anymore. So we are trying to address the lack of markets by creating our own.
Totally understand that. We started out with just publishing books of lots of crime dramas, lots of things like that. And Nick Whale, our overall publisher on things, decided, I think Westerns would be fun. Let's look into Westerns. And since then, it's been growing very well for us. But yeah, it's a struggling marketplace to get into.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. You guys are doing some cool stuff. I like your creature books too.
yes, the creatures are very fun too. The whole Raventail side of the business has been doing quite well too, and slowly finding its feet on things. So,
Good.
yes, those are quite good on all of that. Well, that's pretty much what we have for things. I appreciate your time to be able to come along and discuss all of this. Appreciate your overall insights into the Western and the whole of the publishing business to begin with. So, you've certainly been down the road for that in a whole variety of different ways.
Yeah. I started out as a bookseller. I was a bookstore owner. Then I worked in publishing for years and years.
That's right. Thank you for Mysterious Galaxy. I love that store.
Oh, thank you. Are you in Southern California?
San Diego. Yeah.
San Diego. Okay, good. Good. Yeah. Great store. I haven't been there since the new owners took over, but I need to get back out there and visit.
Now we have the book crawl coming up fairly shortly. We'll be running through there again. So
Nice. Nice.
always a good thing there.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again. Appreciate your time on all of this, and hopefully we'll be seeing a lot more from you in the future.
I'm working on it. Thank you, Kevin.
Always working on it. Yes. Thank you very much.
Yep. Thank you. Take care.